Testing, testing.
You want me to hold the mic? I can have the, okay. You have to be awful close, Thomas.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Thomas Moore. Thank you. Thank you. Mrs. Gupton is one of my heroes. And she and people like her, they have taught me a lot about loving people. So I'm going to sing this song for you, and I want you to listen to the words. It's called Perhaps Love. So perhaps the reason that we love her so much is because that she has shown us a lot about loving people. So I want you to listen to the words, Perhaps Love. Perhaps love is like a resting place, a shelter from a storm. It exists to give you comfort. It is there to keep you warm. And in those times of trouble, when you are most alone, the memories of love will bring you home. Perhaps love is like a window, perhaps an open door. It invites you to come closer. It wants to show you more. And even if you lose yourself and don't know what to do, the memories of love will see you through. Oh, love to some is like a cloud, to some as strong as steel, for some a way of living, for some a way to feel. And some say love is holding on, and some say letting go. Some say love is everything, and some say they don't know. Perhaps love is like the ocean, full of conflict, full of pain, like a fire when it is cold outside, thunder when it rains. If I should live forever and all my dreams come true, my memories of love will be of you. My memories of love will be of you. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Can you hear me? That was a special treat. We had wanted to get Thomas. Didn't know we had asked him, weren't sure he was coming, and planned not to have him here, and he showed up. So, as you can see, and we didn't have enough time program-wise, so we maybe get a little bit more of him later, but right now we need to start. We're starting a little later than we wanted to, but we'll move along. thank you all for coming. Those of us on the committee are really excited about this night. We've been working on it for some time, and we just hope you will enjoy this night with us. I'd like at this time to ask Jack McGuire, the senior pastor at Pritchard Memorial Baptist Church and Emma's rector, to give the invocation.
Because we're privileged to honor someone that honors life by the way she's lived, would you please stand for the invocation? Because we're drawn together, closer to one another and closer to others that we meet because of her life, would you join hands as we pray? Father, we thank you for the gift of this day and particularly this evening, because Emma Gupton has been particularly an example of what your child can be. We thank you for the witness of your love in her life, for the unbelievable generosity of her spirit in time and compassion. We thank you for the team of nurses and physicians, of administrators, technicians and assistants, and all those who've been a part of your healing ministry there at Presbyterian Hospital for so long. We thank you for the other team members who've been a part of her other healing ministries, healing not only broken and battered, bruised bodies, but also torn spirits, wounded emotions. We thank you for the patients for whom she cared so deeply, for whom she still cares so deeply. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to signify our appreciation to her in tangible ways such as this evening, and the gifts that will be given that will have meaning for so many others. And Lord, we thank you that this is not the end of the book, but the end of a chapter. And for the new chapters yet to be written in her life, the continued growth as she is a pilgrim following the Lord Jesus Christ. Speak to us this evening, not only about Emma's life, but about the stewardship of our own lives. We offer ourselves in this prayer through Jesus Christ. Amen.
At this time, I know there are a lot of guests here, but there's some special guests that we want to recognize. And obviously, a wife can't come without her husband. So the first guest is Bill Gupton. We'll ask Bill to stand. And probably the next most important person in her life, and was probably the number one in her life until she met Bill, is Mrs. Kate Allen. Ms. Allen? That's Emma's mother. I was told that she didn't mind about her age at 84. She just passed her driver's test. Congratulations. Her aunt, Mrs. Matlock. Her sisters, Jerry Springle and Lexine White, and their husbands. And last but not least, her daughter Jan, her husband Ken, and especially the star of the show, oh May, is Miss Anna. Young Bill and Katie and Tricia were not able to be with us tonight, but they're, I'm sure, with us in spirit. Now, at this time, while we're here to celebrate, we're here to honor, we're here to reminisce, and we're here to laugh. We're here to cry, if appropriate, and I'm sure there will be some tears shed. I hope they're tears of joy, as exemplified by a lady in Haiti when I was there 4 years ago. Came in to, because she was pregnant, she didn't feel like she was, her baby was moving, and therefore thought her baby was dead. Of course, my mentality was anybody in this God-forsaken place that if she lost another child, it wouldn't make any difference. But when I examined her and found the heartbeat, I noticed that she began to shed some tears. And of course, I was thinking, well, she's shedding tears because maybe I found the heartbeat, so I had my translator to translate for her to what she was crying about and ask her, were they happy tears or sad tears? And she said they were happy tears, so we're going to shed happy tears here tonight. How has Emma touched our lives? She served us personally. She served our patients. She served our patients' families. She served our own families, and she served our friends. What roles does she play? She plays many roles. One as an RN, as a lot of us know her. Some as a mother, and that just is not confined to her family. I know my children think of her as mother, and a lot of you all do too. She's a grandmother. My daughter Ellen feels like mother and grandmother. She's not sure. Friend, colleague, a nanny, a babysitter, and a teacher. I know several of your children she's taught to not only cook, but also to make clothes. She's also a wife, and Bill could tell us about that more than anyone else. At this time, I'm going to ask Dr. Bill Kobe, who has a little trek back in time. This time capsule extends a little bit longer than you might anticipate, but knowing Bill, he's going to stretch it as far as he can go.
Red Gupton made me promise tonight to tell you a little story. So I want to tell you the story about the Indian. He went to his doctor and says, "Doc, you got to help me." He says, "I got these terrible dreams. I feel like I'm a wigwam and a teepee at the same time." The doctor says, "That's easy. You're too tense." I'm sure all of us tonight feel just a little bit like John Ringling North did on the occasion of the retirement of his human cannonball. He says, "Fred, we're going to miss you around this place. It's hard to find anyone of your caliber." We're gathered here tonight to pay tribute to one of the warmest, most compassionate, and most dedicated people I've ever been privileged to know. Some measure of what Emma Gupton has meant to her profession, to the hospital, and to the community could be taken from the many awards which she has received. The Jefferson Award, the American Cancer Society's highest award, the March of Dimes Award is Nurse of the Year, the only award ever given by the Mecklenburg County Medical Society to a nurse for professional excellence in community service. And just last Wednesday, the first annual award for professional excellence by the 5th District of the North Carolina Nurses Association. These awards tell us of the esteem in which she is held by her peers and the community. But they do not tell us of the warm human side of this person we have all come to know and to love. Each of the speakers will help do that. But first, we want to take you on a nostalgic trip through some of the highlights of the life of Emma Gupton. The first slide is borrowed from Steven Spielberg. I asked Presbyterian for some pictures of what life was like in a hospital about the time the Red came to work. And these are the pictures that they gave me. No, leave them on. Even in those days, nearly everyone in the hospital had to wear hard hats because of the construction that was always going on. Transportation in those days was primitive. But the hospital maintained a very good ambulance service. And an excellent staff of security guards. Many years later, the hospital was able to hire as chief of security the staff sergeant from the Gomer Pyle show. This is really more like what the hospital looked like when Emma came. It was a little smaller at that time. Emma took this job thinking that she had a nice, soft, quiet desk job, 9 to 5. No turbulence in her life. Well, welcome, Big Red, to the real world of pediatrics. We want to step backwards in time in the life of Emma Gupton and do a little segment that we're going to call This Is Your Life. The earliest picture that we have of Red is with her brother when she was a small child. I'm sure her hair was even redder then, but it doesn't show in the picture. And this could easily have made the cover of Life magazine. It's showing a typical late teenager in the 1940s. I'm told that Emma was star of the Hiddenite High School basketball team. And of course, in those days, the Final Four meant what was left of the team when Emma fouled out. Her husband, Bill, who served as a fighter pilot in the Second World War and in the Korean War. In this picture in the back of a convertible, Emma seems to know something that Bill doesn't know yet. Here we are singing at the piano in the 1940s, something like Marysy Dotes and Dozy Dotes. Emma's graduation picture when she graduated from Charlotte Memorial Hospital School of Nursing. That's about that time that they were married. Our first picture showing her red hair. The inevitable happened, and Bill and Emma were married. On Emma's right is her mother, who I believe is with us tonight. Leaving the steps of the church. The inevitable happened again. And this is Emma with her firstborn, little Billy. Many years passed, and here's Bill with his wife Tricia at his wedding. And this is their child. Her daughter Jan's wedding. This shows Big Red and Little Red in the same picture. Red made the wedding dress. Jan and Ken's two children. You notice the favorite color of the Gupton family. The baby, Meredith, is the only one of the three grandchildren who has red hair. Red with a couple of clowns and a cowboy, and red with a whole room full of clowns. This is a recent picture of Red just before she retired with her staff. And I'm losing my focus. You may have wondered where in the world she ever got the name Big Red. The next picture is going to explain that, as it shows Red with one of her head nurses. You notice the size discrepancy. Her red hair has been imitated many times, but never improved on. This is the first Big Red Charlotte ever had. The lady they named the city after, Queen Charlotte. Now, when famous people retire, they frequently earn a little spending money by writing their memoirs. Those who don't lend their names to commercial products. I'm sure you've all heard of Air Jordans. This is J.P. Richardson. This is the man who hired Red. He gave her a challenge which would help shape her life for the next 24 years, and in so doing, change the lives of countless others. He told her that the public measures the quality of medical care of every hospital by the care given in its pediatric department. She accepted that challenge and set out to see that the pediatric care in Presbyterian was second to none. She spent the next 24 years of her life working tirelessly toward that goal. A recent picture of Emma just before her retirement. Over the years, she got a lot of publicity. For Emma, every patient was special, and the parents were special too. She made certain that she gave the TLC to the parents as well as the child and made them feel at home. This is one of the many Christmas pictures we have. One of her favorite things was her Christmas party every year. And usually Thomas Moore, who sang for us tonight, would be at the party and sing. And all of her former patients were invited. For Emma, there was no such thing as an 8-hour shift. For 24 years, every 8-hour shift was a 10-hour shift. That was her way of going the second mile. And after a 10-hour shift in the hospital and a long 30-minute ride home, she would arrive dead tired, only to go out to see one of her hospice patients in her role as volunteer nurse. Read with one of the doctors, Fred Mitchell, who then wrote a piece about her in the paper. Jeff Kazar, one of our cystic fibrosis patients. The neonatal intensive care unit. These pictures are from her retirement. A couple of parties that were held. With Miss Snap and the Squires, with Dr. Charlie Gay, Jim Hamilton and Jackie Burr. The doctors just couldn't wait to get their hands on her. With the administrator of the hospital, and if there's any resemblance between this picture and the Marine Sergeant I showed you earlier, it's purely coincidental. Many of the children came to our retirement party, which was very special for Red. Many tears were shed. A framed poem which had been written just for the occasion was given to Red at the time of her retirement party. And I'd like to read to you a part of the poem. Presbyterian Hospital, and especially pediatrics, can be likened to a giant redwood which has attained its stature. Let me flip one more and show you the picture. Which has attained its stature because of the nurturing you gave to it and the people who came through its doors. You are a professional whose white wings carry you through the corridors of those human souls who seek cures and comforts from chaos, confusion, and pain. There is assurance in your voice and a strength that demands we put forth the effort to keep trying. Our hearts will surely testify that you are our woman of the years. Our lives are richer because you kept your finger on the pulse of the broad spectrum of our state, our homes and community, and most importantly, our precious children. And so, Mr. and Mrs. Big Red, farewell for now. Your gentle ways and your dedication to excellence will live on in the hearts of countless numbers whose lives you have touched. May God richly bless you.
Throughout this night, you will find that all of us have certain things to say about Red, and a lot of those are summed up in what I call characteristics. I've asked several people what do they think about Red. How could you sum up in one word, two words, who she is and what she does? The first I started with was my daughter Ellen, and she says she's generous because she always brings her things when she comes home. She's huggable. She's a second mother or grandmother. She has sunshine on her face, a sunshine smile. She's full of joy. There are others, and I'll carry those out later, but right now I'd like to ask Byron Bullard, our Chief of Staff of the hospital, the administrator of Presbyterian Hospital, to come forward and say a few words. While he's coming up, I'd like to recognize Miss Snap, Miss Snap, who is head of nursing at Presbyterian.
Brother Brian, Ms. Gupton, I am indeed highly honored to be a part of all that's going on here tonight. It's most appropriate recognition for one of my very favorite people in the whole world, Emma Kate Gupton. Presbyterian Hospital is a church-related hospital, having one of the first chaplaincy programs at any hospital in the country, Ed Whalen. Our bottom line is straight out of the Bible, the Golden Rule. Therefore, I think we were truly blessed 26 years ago when this special nurse, a Charlotte Memorial Hospital graduate, came to Presbyterian Hospital. A true sparkler, Miss Snap. Emma Gupton not only subscribes to our philosophy, she lives it daily. For years and years, she has unselfishly served God's children, taken care of their parents, and loved and respectfully, gently led at times their attending physicians. Matter of fact, I want to share something with you tonight that I've really never told in public before. Fernco Johnson remembers this. We were at a medical staff meeting and something needed to be moved, and she's the only nurse in history I've ever known to make a motion at a medical staff meeting, get an immediate second, and it be passed unanimously. Matter of fact, when you think of words like loyalty, dedication, trustworthiness, kind, loving, a true professional, you think of Emma Kate Gupton. We know that Emma Kate is the epitome, matter of fact, the personification of what you would want a Presbyterian Hospital employee to be. Matter of fact, I would make everyone there exactly like her if I had the capability of doing so. As I look over my 34 years at Presbyterian Hospital since I was chief of security, I have been very fortunate indeed to be associated with some truly great people. It certainly goes without saying that Emma Kate Gupton is one of the best of the best. My personal life, Jim Hamilton, is richer because she's been a part of it and will continue to be part of it. Matter of fact, Henry Bostic, she's the best public relations person we've ever had. And she's going to continue to handle special projects for the president, and you can bet on that. I have the high honor of working with Emma Kate, and I want to thank you guys personally for permitting me to share this special occasion with her.
I was just handed a note. I forgot to tell everybody I wasn't going to exactly follow the script tonight. And the nurses know how I forget things on the ward, and they're waiting in the wings back there, but I'm having them wait just a little bit more. We're going to have Gail Warren come up. We changed it a little bit, so I'll ask Gail Warren, one of those mothers who had Emma, to give her that special care, and she's going to tell us about her association with Emma.
It's a pleasure to be here, Emma. Somewhere I once read that a person wrapped in themselves makes a very small package, that they are self-centered, and that their dimensions of life are dwarfed and limited. Well, Emma, you and your life are totally the opposite. And no offense, Emma, but you are no small package, lady. You are larger than life itself. Your love has no limits, no prejudices, and no boundaries. You truly exemplify Albert Schweitzer's reverence for life. Schweitzer was called a genius of compassion, and Emma, you fit into that category as well. And he wrote, "We are like waves that do not move individually, but rise and fall in rhythm. To share, to rise, and to fall in rhythm with life around us is a spiritual necessity." Emma, you have practiced that reverence for living in everything you've ever done. You have always risen to meet the needs of your family, your co-workers, your friends, but most especially those of us who are parents on Pediatrics with our children. As a former practicing nurse, I've always wondered how you've avoided professional burnout. I knew I was going to cry. And those of you who know me know I don't cry easily. But I could always look at Big Red and the tears would come. So you'll just have to go through it with us, right, Red? Somehow, if you ever felt burned out, you never showed it in any way. You continued to practice great empathy. And what a role model you have been for all of us. And what a role model you must have been for those nurses on pediatric rotation. Emma and I have found and formed some very special bonds over the last 18 years. We shared in the joy when our firstborn, Stephanie, survived surgery under the expertise of Jim Hamilton. And Emma even performed a very miraculous task. She taught my husband, Joe Warren, who is all thumbs, and he admits it, to feed this little 5-pound, 2-ounce baby girl. And it took 2.5 hours to feed her that special feeding at that time. And he did it. And I can't tell you how many times that has paid off in years to come. And he even learned to diaper. And it was wonderful. And he never had any brothers and sisters. So, Emma, that was a real miracle you worked. I thank you. 3 years later, Emma was there when we returned to pediatrics under not such happy circumstances. We brought Stephanie in to the devastating diagnosis of an inoperable brain tumor. We felt as though we had lost our future, our hopes, and our dreams. But however, because of Emma and those like her, we were able to get over the initial shock and proceed through the next year and a half. She supported us not only in getting through radiation treatments, but in the difficult task of disciplining a terminally ill child. I even found the courage to discipline another child under unusual circumstances. And I have to mix the fun with the sadness. But the second round of radiation treatments, Stephanie had to wear a wig, or chose to wear a wig. She was a little bit older then, and she decided that she would look better if she had hair. So she wore the wig to school, and this little boy kept jerking it off, drab it off, and it upset her. The teachers had talked to the little boy, and nothing worked. And they were, upset, and Stephanie was upset, and I was beginning to get a little angry about it. So I was over for a party, and I sat down next to the little boy, and I said, I don't know if you really understand, and he was just about 4 years old, but you really do hurt Stephanie's feelings when you do this, and I really wish you wouldn't do it. And he kind of looked at me, his little boy as well, like, And I said, and as a matter of fact, if you do it again, I'm going to cut your hand off. The little boy's mouth flew open. And later, I can't believe I did it, but I did. And the teacher said, "What did you say to him? He never touched her again." And he walked around with his hands in his pockets a lot. And I told them, and they said, "Well, we're glad you did it because we couldn't have said that." So, with all the tears, there were some moments that we had to laugh at. It is said that when your parent dies, you have lost your past. When your child dies, you have lost your future. Facing that was tough, but we were luckier than most in that we had very special TLC. We had Emma, Blair Bryan, with whom I could also shed a few tears, Jerry Petty, and many, many other loving doctors, nurses, friends, and family. And there's a song that if I could possibly sing like Thomas More, I would sing that what a difference you've made in our lives. And we are most grateful. In most nursing and medical schools, they teach you that to become emotionally involved is not always the best idea. It will impair your judgment, and that it's also very difficult for you to carry on. But fortunately, I think Emma ignored that, as did a lot of people I know, and turned that trend around, and we've been known to let the tears flow quite often. I recall one particular day, the last day that Stephanie was admitted to the hospital. As we walked together down the hall with the stretcher, Emma and I cried openly. It was at this time that Jerry Petty warned Emma, very kindly of course, that she was getting too emotionally involved and that it wasn't helping me. I happened to overhear that, and I politely told him he was very wrong. that it was very comforting to me and that it meant a great deal in getting me through. And by the way, Jerry Petty, I don't know where you're sitting, but that was kind of like the pot calling the kettle black, because I also happen to know, and Emma was instrumental in this, that shortly thereafter, Audrey and Jerry were scheduled to take a trip to Hawaii. And Jerry Petty was not going to go on that trip because of Stephanie's condition. And Emma and Joe plotted, and Joe picked him up and took him to the plane, and they went. So Emma, you see, you've taken care of all of us in so many, many ways. After Stephanie's death, she proceeded to do just that by suggesting and seeing my need to become involved in something and to direct my energies into something special. And I became involved with the American Cancer Society. That was wonderful therapy, and it has been so for 10 years. We worked together on many projects, and most special of those, I think, are working with other families and parents who have had similar difficulties. Tonight is just our way of saying thank you, Emma and Bill, for all they've done. Thanks for the joy, thanks for the tears, and the love you have given so freely. You worked miracles in our hearts, and you've been an inspiration to us all. I know I speak for everyone here. It is a privilege to be your friend. Our wish for you tonight, Emma, is that you have fun, that you read more books that you've never taken the time to read, and that most of all, you take some time for yourself. Retirement doesn't mean you're through and we're not letting you out. It's just that you've begun a new way of life with new freedoms to enjoy, we hope. Health, happiness, and longevity to you and Bill. And this sums it up. For the art of love is God at work through you. I love you.
Thank you, Gail. At this time, we want to put on a Broadway show. We've gone out and we need to liven things up a little bit. I think Mr. Bullitt is in, and Miss Snap are probably getting ready to lose some of their choice nurses because I think they've been looked at by scouts around. So come on, girls, and let's be on with the show.
You all know how Mrs. Gupton always wants things to be done just exactly right, especially if she's not going to be there. And even when she's not there, she'll call us and she'll say, "Is everything going okay? Exactly as I told you to do it." Now picture this. Mrs. Gupton is going on vacation to Hawaii with her friend Lee. You see, Bill is at home because school doesn't have a vacation. Here we see her leaving explicit instructions to her head nurse.
Miss Know-It-All, my vacation for Hawaii starts tomorrow. There's several very important things I want to make sure that you do. Now be sure that you write them all down. First of all, be sure the payroll gets in by 9 o'clock every morning. If you want your paycheck. Yes, ma'am. Be sure that we have enough staff for the weekend, and you need to start early. Order that new Calyptotropic XLY monitor with recorder. And get the order in so we'll get the good price. And if you forget anything else, don't forget this one. Be sure that Dr. Hamilton has his coffee in the morning, and he likes sweet love.
Pediatrics, Miss Know-It-All.
Oh, Miss Know-It-All, I'm so glad you answered the phone. I'm having such a good time in Hawaii. And it's so relaxing. But I just want to make sure everything is going okay.
Yes, ma'am, I got that payroll in 10 minutes ago. It's now 9 o'clock.
Did Dr. Hamilton get his coffee?
Yes, ma'am. First thing.
Well, have a good time while I'm gone.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Whenever Miss Gupton was asked to be involved in a seemingly impossible situation, she always carried one thing with her, one thing that gave her the strength to endure. Here we see Miss Gupton assisting one of her more experienced head nurses, starting an IV.
How's it going?
I cannot get this IV.
You can do that.
This baby is so hard to stick. Would you
Look,
please
look,
do it
look,
for
feel
me?
this one right here. I can feel that. Can you feel that? Can you? Look, I can feel that. Can you feel that? You can feel that. Go ahead now. I know you can do that. You can do that. Go
Start the
ahead.
IV with an audience.
You can do that now. Look, here you go.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
there you go. Now, that's right. Wipe it off. Oh no, my shoes. Bill just. Oh no, my Reeboks. Bill just polished these. Now, there you go. A little tighter, a little tighter. That's good. That's fine. You're doing. Okay. Now a little to the
I
left.
just
A
cannot
little
get-
to the right. No.
I
no.
just get, would you please start this for me? I really can't. She is so difficult.
Wait.
Please start this for me.
Wait just a minute. Let me get my cross.
It's just too hard for me. I can't.
There, we got it. I didn't do that. God help me do it. Mrs. Gupton, to the desk, please. To the desk, please. Mrs. Gupton, you're needed in room 204, please. 204. Mrs. Gupton, your meeting with Miss Snap was 10 minutes ago. Line 3. Mrs. Gupton, you're needed to start an IV in the treatment room. Please bring your cross. Bring your cross. Bring your cross. Miss Gupton, emergency in the coffee room. Dr. Hamilton in, no coffee made. Mrs. Gupton, all your nurses have called in sick on 3 to 11, all nurses. Mrs. Gupton, please, to the treatment room. LP that needs to be done, all nurses on break. Mrs. Gupton, 15 admissions due this afternoon, all on their way. Mrs. Gupton, please report to the desk immediately. Report to the desk. Several doctors are pulling their own charts. Mrs. Gupton, emergency. Dr. Warner is making rounds by himself.
Everybody still with us? I hope you're not ready to take your children to Memorial after that. Someone said, "Where's that?" At this time, I'd like to ask Kathy Chilimus to come up, and she's another mother like Gail who would like to share some of her story with you.
I'm up here because Dr. Hamilton asked me to speak at this little reception at some little church where I would know everybody's name. And I once told Red, I said I would walk to China and back with no shoes for Dr. Hamilton. And this takes the place of 10 trips over there and 10 trips back. I hate to speak in front of people, but I'll try. I hope I do all right. The reason I'm speaking is because my husband and I, Sam, we have 3 children, Michael, Kiki, and George. And our youngest son, George, was born in the spring of 1984, and he spent nearly the first 5 months of his life in the intensive care unit at Presbyterian. Is there something wrong?
It's on. Oh. Let's put it around this way, Kathy.
You put me behind an act like that, and now you get the microphone. Anyway. Now I have 3 minutes to speak, and that's like giving 3 potato chips to a gorilla, or Red maybe, but anyway, as I was saying, my youngest son George spent the first nearly 5 months of his life in the intensive care unit at Presbyterian, and I bothered those people to death. They say I didn't, but I did. If there was a rule to be broken, I broke it. I was supposed to come at a certain time, normal hours for normal people, and I kept on telling them, Sam and I are not a normal couple, and this is not a normal baby, so none of the rules apply. And poor Trudy and poor Janet, who finally stopped me. You're only supposed to bring your grandparents in, and they finally stopped me when I had bought my George's godmother's niece's brother's sister. They said, okay, Kath, that's enough, you know. So that was the last one that got in. My husband Sam is not here tonight, and I'm very glad because I get to tell a story on him. And if any of y'all ever tells him that I told this story, you're going to be in big trouble with Dr. Hamilton. But Sam met Miss Gupton before I did, and I remember it so well, just like it was yesterday. George was 3 days old, and I was recovering from a horrendous C-section and still in a wheelchair with a catheter and an IV. And Sam came to get me at 7 o'clock to take me down for 5:30 visiting hours, and that's our schedule. And so as he was wheeling me down, the unit was still on the second floor, and he was wheeling me down to the elevator, and he said to me, he said, Kathy, have you met the head nurse of Pediatrics? Well, he really didn't say that, and Emma can tell you what he really said was, because he's Greek, he said to me, he said, Kathy, have you met the big boss lady of the hospital yet? And I said, well, no. I said, what's her name? He said, now really, I don't even remember your mother's name, much less a nurse's name. I said, that's true. That was a dumb question. I take it back. I said, well, what does she look like? He said, well, she's got a red hair. And she's got a big, beautiful smile that goes from here to here. I thought about that. And then he said, well, let me tell you something. I found the good cook of the hospital. And I thought, oh, here it comes, the good cook speech. And he goes on, he says, how many times do I have to tell you, it don't matter if you cook hamburgers or you're the president of the United States, if you're a good cook, everything's a fix-em-up. The hamburgers turn out good and the interest rates come down and everything's all right. He's a Greek Republican. And so he said, this lady, I can tell you, she knows exactly what she's due, and I not worry about our little Georgie no more, because if she's taking care of him, everything's a fix-em-up. Well, the elevator stopped at the 4th floor, and I knew it was the wrong floor, but Sam was so busy talking about President Reagan and Lee Iacocca and Miss Gupton and Ted Koppel that he got off the elevator talking of his good cook speech, and it was the wrong floor. And I knew it was the wrong floor, but he wasn't listening to me. And so he was so busy talking. In fact, he turned around to get me off on the wrong floor, and the elevator doors had closed. And I could hear him because I was going back up to the 6th floor through the elevator shaft, and he said, oh, no, I don't know where I am. And there were these 2 little old ladies, and they were standing nearby, and they came up to me and said, well, son, we'll tell you where you need to go. We'll take you there. Just tell us where you need to go. And he says, oh, don't worry about me, but you see, I just lost my wife. And they said, my goodness, how terrible. And he said, and they said, it's terrible. And they said, but son, you just got to believe that your wife is in heaven with God. And he said, no, she's not. She's all the way back up on the 6th floor by now. And they said, well, it doesn't matter where her body is. You've just got to believe her spirit's with God. And he said, said, well, I'm going to stand right here, and I hope that they're both going to come back down together at the same time. So I came back down, and the elevators opened up, and he got back on the elevator with the little old ladies, and we were all, and I said, goodness gracious sakes alive. I said, what in the world did this red-headed nurse with that big, beautiful smile do to you to leave your poor wife in her bedroom slippers and her bathrobe with her IV and her catheter and an IV pole on an elevator to run around God knows where in the hospital, who just had your baby? And he said, well, I'll tell you what she'd do. She gave me a bigger kiss and a bigger hug. Well, I was struck speechless by that. But the little old ladies, they said, oh. And then he looked at them, and he looked at me. He knew what I was thinking, and he said, and I tell you something else. I gave her a big hug and a big kiss right back because she got a good Greek heart. So we got down to the second floor, and we got off the elevator and went our merry way and left the little old ladies to work out that situation the best they could. And I made it my top priority for the next day to meet this red-haired femme fatale who had been hugging and kissing on my husband without my permission. And when I met Red, I found out that she was a good cook and she had a good heart, and I felt a whole lot better about where George was. From then on, I really didn't have any worries because I figured if a lady like Red was there, everything was fixed up. Now, Red has a big heart and had a lot of tributes tonight, a lot of honors, and I think that her heart is big enough that she would appreciate me to switch the limelight a little bit from her onto that institution that she gave her life and her heart to, other than Bill and her family, Presbyterian Hospital. I was up there, as I said, for nearly 5 months, and I never missed a day, and boy, did they know it. I would stay for hours on end. And I think while the 5 months, I probably saw every department. The emergency room, I went in there several times myself with problems. The radiology department, the chaplain's department. I was even up on the top floor a couple of times where Sam says they ought to keep me, but. And I saw the business administration office. I saw every place. And let me tell you, and this is the truth, and Mr. Bullock is not paying me to say this. He might pay me after, but he's not paying me now. Presbyterian is the finest hospital. And I mean that. You know, I would go in there, the sparkling floors, it wasn't necessarily the most beautiful hospital, and that's the truth, but everything was clean. And everybody spoke to me. I had some of the maintenance people, I called them Mr. and Mrs. Mop, and they'd see me every day. They'd be at the same place, cleaning the same clean floor every day. And they'd say, hey, Miss Mama, and I'd say, hey, Miss Mop, and we'd say, how's the baby? And I'd say, fine, he's going to be home soon. They said, oh, good, I'm praying for you. And I'd say, thank you, I appreciate it. But I think that what the first president of Presbyterian Hospital said is true. The pediatric ward is the scope of the hospital, the heartbeat. And the intensive care unit is really the pulse of the hospital. And Emma Gupton has the finest staff. And I'm going to cry, I know. She has the finest staff of nurses. A nurse can't call herself a nurse until she's willing not to give 100%, but to give all it takes to get the job done. There was one nurse that meant a lot to me after Dr. Hamilton and Miss Gupton was Janet. And I came there one day at 5:30, and I knocked on the door, which I usually didn't do, but for some reason I did it, and I said, I'm George's mom, can I come in? And the little nurse peeked out, and she said, well, you're George's mom. I said, and she said, well, why don't you wait a little bit, because George blew his IV and is having a new one put in. And I said, well, who's doing it? And she said, Janet. And I said, well, it's 5:30. And she said, I know. You see, Janet's shift ended at 3. And just the day before, she had told me that George was blowing all of his veins, and it was getting harder and harder to find him. And I knew that Janet was there 2.5 later, not because she was a good nurse, because she knew that she had the experience to find a vein on that tiny, tiny baby in maybe 6 or 7 tries, when another nurse would have took 13 or 14 or 15, and she didn't want George to suffer. anymore. And my husband, Sam, has never cried in front of me. And Trudy, who saw Sam after George had a massive tumor that was larger than his head off the side of his throat when he was born. And in the second day after he was alive, and Dr. Hamilton went in there and took the tumor off of him in its entirety, after 6.5 hours, Sam couldn't take any more, and he went down to find out if the baby was dead or alive, or the tumor was gone or not gone, or what was going on. And he saw Trudy. And he said that he's never cried since he was 6 years old. And Bill can identify with this. He was 6 years old, and he was born on an island in Greece that was so devastated by the poverty imposed by Hitler's army that he cried, not because he didn't have shoes and there was snow on the ground, but because his little sister, who was 3 years old, didn't have shoes and was having to walk in the snow. But this man, who prides himself on not crying, when Trudy met him and she said to him, she said, "You have the most beautiful baby boy in the world." Have that been a lot? You know, Emma is a Christian, and that says more. That says it all. One day in the hall, when I thought I was going to spend the eternity of my life going back and forth to Presbyterian, not knowing from day to day if George was going to live or die, she said, I passed her in the hall, and I was laughing and smiling, which I do to hide the worst, and she looked right through me and she said, "Kathy, you know, I know you're hurting inside." And she said, "You know, all my years on the pediatric ward at Presbyterian remind me of this old hymn that says, 'Though you be beaten and hung high upon a cross on a hill, my son, a mother's love will follow you still.'" And I always meant to tell her, and for some reason I never found the chance, that you could replace that word with mother, and that old hymn would sound, you could replace the word mother with nurse, and the hymn would sound just as true to me. Because Emma is a nurse, and more than just a nurse, a true nurse, when you look at her, you see Christ in action. And if you can look at a nurse like Emma Gupton and not see some strong faith, then you're blind. And I've written a poem for Emma, and I didn't cry much in front of Emma. I just don't like to cry in front of people, but this is the kind of things I was thinking when I would cry at home alone or driving to and from the hospital, which I did most of my crying then. And I hope it tells her, although no words that anybody could say could possibly tell a nurse how precious they are to a mother who feels like the end of her world has come. And Marilyn, whose real fault it is that I'm up here, who didn't interpret for me Dr. Hamilton's little reception at a little hospital, she's going to have to read the poem for me for payment.
I'm going to read this, but I know that I can't possibly say it as beautifully as Kathy. As you can tell, she is an excellent speaker, and I don't think I have ever known anyone in my life who expresses herself so beautifully. But Red, this is what she wrote for you. That's what you have there. We're going to read this so that all of you in the audience can share it with Red. It was only with feet willing to take uncountable steps that she could travel the length of a hospital to duty's door, at which the journey of a nurse begins and ends. The passing seasons which call away the years have often led this nurse's steps onto hills of happiness. But then, too, her footsteps have echoed in the valley of shadows, where she relinquished a little lamb to the shepherd who keeps watch 'neath the oak of heaven's sleep. And even then, a nurse must turn away and walk on. It was only hands firm in faith that she could reach out to strangers with the hurting child and guide them away from suffering stormy seas into a calm harbor of a hoped-for tomorrow and the chance to begin anew. Yes, this nurse's hands can impart such ease to a child as it tossed on a tear-wet pillow, and with the grace of a tender prayer, she smoothed sorrow from its face. It was only with eyes of compassion that one nurse could look upon so much of bitter fate revealed and weep unashamed for each heart sundered and torn by fear. Her eyes knew anguished tears, and those of sweet relief as the ringing of death's toll was struck silent. In defeat, hushed by the courage of a child, then this nurse saw joy. It was only with the heart full of hope that a nurse can fulfill the great commitment of Scripture when she remains, regardless of the cost, at the side of fathers and mothers, standing against the unstandable with empty arms aching and hearts slowly breaking as their angel unaware slips from the bonds of earthly care. This nurse, she has never failed, not once, to give the gift of a smile at the very moment when hope shines through her tears and makes Red's smile divine.
Hang on, folks, we're getting there. Jackie, liven us up a little bit. Jackie used to be head nurse at Jackie was head nurse at Presbyterian for years until she retired to Gaston County, and now she's a nurse in the public health service.
Darn. I've been commissioned to tell you all the funny things I know about Red Gupton in 5 minutes. And I'm following really some pretty hard acts. And I don't feel real funny. As my oldest boy told me when I came over, he said, "Mama, tell him first you're not a comedian." So I don't know how I rate in the eyes of my children. But let me tell you about the first humorous thing that happened that I remember about Red, and that was way back when I first came to work at Presbyterian Hospital. And you know, if you're a northerner, you got one strike against you down here. But I felt privileged to work at Presbyterian and very privileged to work under Red. And after my 6 months of probation, I guess you call it, I had an evaluation, and I felt glad that she liked me the way I liked her. The funniest thing, though, was after she gave me a glowing evaluation, at the end we walked out the door, and she said, "You know, Jackie," she said, "you are so special. I just can't believe that you're not a Baptist. Are you an Episcopalian?" Now, you've heard how much she loves her Lord, and you see she's a gal that does it her way. But I didn't want to tell her then, but, you know, us Episcopals, we're just a little bit different. We wear white robes and throw out a little incense. But down in the heart, love has no denomination, and Red will be the first to tell you that. You know, Red did run a tight ship on pediatrics, though, and she was really what we call a company man. I mean, you couldn't take home a paperclip. If you went to Red's house and needed a Band-Aid, honey, it didn't come from Presbyterian Hospital. She also believed you had to put in your 8 hours, and we're talking about being there not on time, but 15 minutes early. You could get a half hour for lunch, and you could take 10 minutes for a break. Now, she didn't take many breaks, but I remember one break that she took that we call it her famous break. You know, she consoled her parents, her children, her nurses, and even her doctors. And Dr. Raby used to come by, and I don't know what all they talked about, but he needed to talk to her alone, so they went into the linen closet and they shut the door. Now, unbeknownst to them, the door locked and could not be opened from the inside. And we're talking about a busy, busy morning. And you might hear a little tap, you hear a little hollering, and finally you heard this hollering, and about 6 people came running. I'm talking doctors, nurses, and people. Finally we got the door open, and out comes Red, her face as red as her hair. And Dr. Raby sputtering about why they were in there. And I told Red, I said, Red, if you want a mid-morning break, you don't have to go to the linen closet. Now, thereafter at Presbyterian Hospital, if 2 or more were gathered in the linen closet, you've had your break. You know, Red's a strong and powerful person, and she has a lot of influence, too. I kind of think she's like E.F. Hutton. When Red speaks, people listen. Now, last year, several of us went to the beach, and I'll tell you, when you go to the beach with Red, you do a bunch of shopping. You heard about a stone unturned, we top it a shop unturned. And we go in them every time. And there was a little unique shoe store down there that she really liked, and she wanted to take us to. It's a store that the prices were low, but the displays were nice, and the shoes were really good. We walked through the door, and apparently they have changed their decor. And now their shoes, instead of nicely displayed like belts, are jammed up against the walls in boxes. And Red stands in the middle of the floor, and she says, "What did you do to this store?" The manager, or appears to be a manager, is sitting over here, and he's working, and he looks up and he looks down, and a little old lady comes over and she says, "Can I help you?" And Red said, "I can't believe what you've done to this store. This used to be a good store to come into." There's about 6 of us, and we're thinking, oh no. And so the lady jumps right on her bandwagon. I told him this would never do. This would never do. People don't like to come in a place and buy shoes like this. I tried to tell him. Well, you should have told him. And he's over there getting red. I think the lady lost her job. I don't know. But Red said, "Let's go." And so we all turned around and left. But now I want to tell you, next time we went down to that beach, we went back in that shoe store, and honey, those shoes were displayed. Now, I don't know what kind of influence Red had over that manager, but I would say that Red's vote counts. One of the greatest gifts that Red has is to make people feel that they count too, and especially children. There was never a child that came to Presbyterian Hospital that Red saw that didn't think they were the most important child there. I don't care if they were there for an adenoidectomy, a test today and out tomorrow, or there for 20 days or 20 months. They felt there wasn't any other child there but them. And you can ask Missy Soderlin that, because she was a little gal that was in and out of our hospital for many times in the first years of her life. And one time she was getting ready to leave, and apparently she was going up north, to meet her grandmother, whom she'd never met. And one of the nurses, and it might have been Diane Gainey, because they were real good friends, that came by and she said, "You know, Missy, I understand you're going north." And Missy said, "Yep. I understand you're going to meet your grandmother, your granny, for the first time." And Missy's little eyes got big as buttons, and she said, "No, I know my granny. She's here, Granny Gupton." And Red was granny to a lot of children. But like I said, it didn't matter if it was someone that was there for a long time or someone there for a short time. I remember another little girl who was in for about 5 days, and I don't really remember why, but her name was Marie, and she had carrot red hair, and you know what that says, don't you? She's real special. And so Red would go in every day, and she'd say, "Marie, I don't know what I'm going to do when you leave. I don't ever get little redhead here, and I would be so lonely when you leave this floor, and I hope your doctor knows. And I hope he doesn't let you go home right away, because I'll miss you." One day she went in, and her nurse was Barbara Lork, and if you know Barbara Lork, you know her hair's red too. And so Red came in, and she said to Marie, "Marie, I'm so glad you're still here." It was on a Monday after a weekend. And she said, I'm going to be so sad when you leave. I get some big red-headed girls here like your nurse, but never little red-headed girls." And after she left, the little girl turned to Barbara Lork and she said, "You know, my daughter came this morning. I think I'm leaving tomorrow, but don't you tell your mother." And you know, Red liked little boys just as well as she did little girls. And vice versa. And there was never a little boy that liked her any more than Johnny Presley. Now, Johnny was in our hospital a good bit, too. And he planned to go home. And things didn't work out real well for Johnny, except in our hearts. And one day when he was planning on going home, he said, Miss Gupton, when I go home, don't you never get none other boy but me. And there wasn't never none other boy like Johnny Presley. And so I want to say thanks. Thanks for myself and for my colleagues. Thanks for your example that has helped us use our lives to our fullest. Thank you, Red Gupton, my teacher, my mentor, but most of all, my friend.
Now, all of you doctors can identify with the next guy that's coming up. No matter who was making, you know, if Red came in and I'd come in to make rounds, and this happened to many of the rest of you, and we'd have all our charts and we'd start down the hall, all of a sudden Dr. Hamilton would walk on the floor. She would immediately get someone else to make rounds with you, and she'd go make rounds with him or to get his coffee. So we all kind of take second fiddle to him, but he's such a great guy, and I'm going to give you Dr. Hamilton now with no coffee.
Thank you. Jackie, you got any coffee? I tell you, this is a super night. It's hard to say anything towards the end of a program like this, so I'm going to make my remarks fairly brief. But if you all will look around the room tonight and see who's sitting next to you, you will see many people who contributed a lot to pediatric care in Charlotte. But Red Gupton, the lady sitting down in front, is the person who has probably contributed more to the care of pediatrics in the last 25 years than any other person in this city. She's actually set the standards of excellence for pediatric care in Charlotte, and that's a standard which we're all going to try to live up to. Now, how did she set that standard? Well, it was hard work. And no one would ever accuse Byron Bullard of not knowing how to manage money. He paid her for 8 hours a day, and she worked 18 and 20. How else did she do it? She showed love, she showed hope, and she showed courage. And then 8 years ago, she was struck with multiple sclerosis. And this was a horrible time in her life. She had bad pains in her legs. She had difficult time walking. She was dizzy. But what did Red do? She worked harder. And I'll give Byron credit, and Miss Snap, I've heard them both beg her to please go home after your 8-hour shift and come in again tomorrow. But Red worked harder. She showed more love, more hope, and more courage. Eventually, her heart and mind were willing, but her body had given out, and she was not able to maintain the high standards that she had set for herself and others, and that's why she had an early retirement. Jackie has just said this, but Red Gupton is one of these people who always makes you feel the greatest person in the world. Whether you're a child, a parent, a doctor, she can do that like no one else can. And that's in spite of spending the night before with the family, comforting, supporting, praying with the dying child and his family. And her strength really came out when the rest of us sometimes would give up. She would start showing strength and support. The pediatricians, other physicians, and friends have established an Emma Gupton Pediatric Fund
to honor this great lady. And I want to introduce Jean Sullivan, who is the chairman of this fund. Jean, please stand up. And Jean will be Jean has worked for 2.5 months getting this together and will be happy to take any checks if you want to give her some tonight. The fund is, all contributions are tax deductible. It's a separate fund in the Presbyterian Foundation, and that's what gives it its tax deductible status. The Emma Gupton Pediatric Fund Committee will use the proceeds from this fund for the betterment of children at Presbyterian Hospital. Red, we're all privileged to have walked in your shadow. Our faith in God must be strengthened to know He created Emma Gupton. You all have these folders, and that explains how you can make your contribution. I'm going to make a 3-year pledge. You can do it however you want to, and we know that this will be a lasting honor to both the children of Charlotte and to a great lady.
Now for that person who really is with Red in many a situation, life, death, sorrow, hurt, the chaplain, Scott Lindsay.
Never, never again will I be last on a program. Can't even get the mic up. Wow. She's been called Ms. Gupton. She's been called Emma, or by those who know her especially well, Emma Kate. She's been called Red, and even by those who would dare to say it, Big Red. And in closing, I would invite you one more time, really as we've been doing this whole hour or so, to travel down memory lane with me as I reminisce about the relationship I've shared with her for 15 years, and think specifically about your own relationship with her, as I'm sure you already have been doing. To think about the ways in which that relationship may have changed, just as the names by which you called her have changed. Please do that with me. It all began for me 15 years ago when I first came to the hospital visiting church members who were patients there. First as a student minister and then later as an associate minister at First Presbyterian Church. It was absolutely incredible to me how she knew what I needed most. You see, I'd been to school a long time, and I knew that the time had come for me to do a little work and a little visiting in the hospital on my own. The last thing I wanted anybody to know was that I was a little uneasy about it. Somehow she knew that. She singled me out and made me feel like I was kind of unique and special, and she was going to take me under her wing. She had an uncanny ability, as she's done with so countless many of us here and throughout this community, to come up and say to me those glowing and generous things which all the while I knew I didn't deserve, but I sure needed to hear. It was the kind of stuff that would make you wish you had a tape recording so that you could send it to your mother on Mother's Day or that you could bring out when you felt low. She was nurturing and affirming in ways that I knew I didn't deserve, but I so desperately needed. And I somehow knew, furthermore, that she was doing it in a way that was not threatening, that wasn't calling attention to itself, but made all the difference in the world to me when I needed it most. That nurturing friend, that affirming gift was the magic of Ms. Gupton, as I called her then. Well, I left. I was away for a few years and then came back, this time as chaplain at Presbyterian. By then, I'd gotten up my courage and no longer called her Ms. Gupton, but Emma. She was no longer just my nurturing and affirming friend. She was now my partner. As so often in some really heart-rending cases under her care on PEDS, together we would roll up our sleeves and try and muster some way at all, if we could find it, to lend just a little extra support and care. I'm not sure I knew it then, and even if I did, I wouldn't have said it out loud. But I'm proud to say it tonight, that even though I knew, I really believed that I had been called by God to be there and to try in some small way to offer that kind of support. There were all too many times I couldn't have done it if she hadn't been not only my anchor, but my own guide through some very troubled waters. Here I was, the chaplain of all people, who was supposed to bring that kind of care and support to others, who many occasions simply just didn't feel like it. And then I would look over and see my partner, who was no longer just my friend, Ms. Gupton, but my friend and partner, Emma. But then it was only in recent months and years, as we approached her retirement, which we talked about so much, when it took on a subtle change, when it was more than just my friend, that one who had such a special, uncanny, secret way of affirming and nurturing me, and even more than my partner, Emma, but Red, who had that way of telling me what I needed to hear, even when I didn't want to hear it. Now, the way it usually went was like this. I'd be leaving the back of the hospital, going to the car to go home at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, and so often, doggone it, here would come Emma, heading out the same direction, finally going home herself. Got to the point where I would try and look around the corner to see if she was coming, because it happened so often. And invariably the conversation would go literally like this, as so many of you could well know and appreciate. Scott, you've got to quit working so late. You've got to get home. You've got a family. You've got children. You've got to have a life outside this hospital. It isn't going to help the hospital. It isn't going to help your family or yourself if you keep working such long, hard hours. You've got to get some help. Get home. Quit doing this. And then we get to the car and drive off. The whole while there I sat thinking, but this isn't right. Here is somebody who's considerably old enough to be my mother. We both had red hair at one time. Who would come and say to me these things, which were all true, but all the while I knew that she, at that late hour of the evening, wasn't even herself going home, but going to someone's house who needed her, or to a board meeting. And to top it all off, had been there at least 2 or more hours before I had even thought about getting to the hospital, who probably was reporting for duty before I even woke up and got out of bed. And here she was telling me to stop it. What I'm saying is that we've all known that Emma Red Gupton that I've just described. And there are 2 qualities that I think have been interwoven throughout this night because they're so much a part of her life. They're very quickly these. That ability to make us feel good about ourselves even when we didn't deserve it. That's a rare and special ability. But as we so well know, it didn't stop there. With her, it went beyond that. And it's that I will always remember and value above all else. that she had that ability to bring out the very best that we have within ourselves to be. I know I witnessed it with my eyes when she would do it with the nurses she worked with and who worked for her, in a sense. I witnessed it in doctors who, in a sense, told her what to do as she brought out the best in them. But I especially think of it as been so eloquently brought out tonight in parents who had every reason in this world to quit, to give up, who would think and even say, I've reached that limit, there are no more resources, my coping powers are shot. And then, in short order, in her company, they'd reach down again and keep going in ways that I dare say even surprised themselves. That is a rare and special quality. One last word, because there's no way I can say thank you. I won't even try. But I want to address this to Bill and to Jan. It seems to me that you all have made the ultimate sacrifice. There have been times, I know, that you had to wonder if there was enough to go around. But you trusted that. You allowed it to happen. You shared this dear and remarkable lady with us. And we will forever be in your debt for allowing that to happen, as over so many years and in such vital ways she's touched our lives. We do thank you. One last parting word, dear one. May God bless you as you have so richly blessed and inspired our lives. We love you, and God bless you.
Now get the food ready, Jackie. We're going to be there in a minute. I'd like to ask Patsy Ballard and Bud Kirby to give us a little musical rendition here.
You weren't the last. This has been terribly hard for me. I worked in pediatrics for 2 years after I graduated from Presbyterian. And when I left Presbyterian, it was only because of the distance that I had to drive 45 minutes both ways. And Miss Snap didn't know this, but Miss Gupton was helping me to find another job. And the first person I called when the Clover School District called me was Miss Gupton, not my husband, not anyone else but Miss Gupton, to tell her that I had another job and to get her feedback on this, because I don't think I would have taken it, even though I needed better hours and the other reasons nurses leave the hospital work. I wanted the challenge to stay at the hospital, but Miss Gupton knew what I needed in my life. And when I left, I wrote her a letter, and I don't know how many nurses have done that have left her staff. I wrote her a letter, and whether I said it or not, she was like my mother. My parents divorced when I was 9, and she knew this, and I didn't know her that well when I was in nurses training, but I did some singing. And when Dr. Kobe called me about 6 weeks ago and asked me to do this, the whole time I was thinking, no, no, no. But when he said Ms. Gupton specifically asked, then I knew I had to do it, because I knew even any mistakes that I would make, she would say, that was beautiful, because that's always what she did. And I knew that anything would be overcome because of that. I have a lot of memories, and one statement that I know other nurses here that worked with her will remember her saying many, many times, and that was, once a pediatric nurse, always a pediatric nurse. And I do work with children, and I think about her very, very often. And this song I'm going to do is Climb Every Mountain. And I think we remember it from The Sound of Music, the nun singing this song. I don't want you to think of me as the nun when I sing it, but I want you to think of Miss Gupton. These are really the words she told me when she knew that I was going to make that move and leave Presbyterian. And they have all these satellite hospitals now, and if you'd get one a little closer to Gastonia, maybe I could go back to the hospital, because I don't think I'd go anywhere but Presbyterian to work again. And I want to tell Thomas that he has the advantage. I don't know if he gets nervous anymore, but he doesn't break out and turn red like I do. hide it so easily. And I met a nurse that I worked with, 14 years ago, and she said, that's one thing I remembered about you was your neck turning red. And I don't know if the doctors remember it, but gosh, if I ever made rounds when I was scared to death, that would happen. I didn't shake a whole lot, but I just turned red. Okay. Fantastic pianist. Climb every mountain, search high and low, follow every byway, every path you know. Climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every rainbow, till you find your dream. A dream that will need all the love you can give every day of your life, for as long as you live. Climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every rainbow, till you find your dream. My mouth is so dry. Climb every mountain, search high and low, follow every byway, every path you know. Climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every rainbow, till you find your dream. A dream that will need all the love you can give every day of your life, for as long as you live. Climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every rainbow, till you find your dream.
Think you can talk now? You want to wait later?
See? Okay. How wonderful. How wonderful. I just want to thank all the pediatricians and friends for making this such a very special day and evening for me. I'll never, ever, ever forget it. I know that each of you know how much you mean to me. I look out and I see a lot of physicians that I've worked with through the years and how grateful I am for all the times that we've spent together. I'm so happy to see a lot of my neighbors and friends. I'm so happy that my mother could be here, who encouraged me through the years and Bill and Jan. Jan was a teenage latchkey kid, but she was the greatest on earth. There's just so many things that I want to say thank you for, but especially to the wonderful, wonderful pediatricians. For the pediatricians and friends for, again, making this night possible. And then to Gail Warren and to all her committees, to Jean, I don't want to call names, I'll leave someone out, but you know how hard you've worked for 2 or 3 months and how grateful I am to you for all that you've done and for what you mean to me. For the children and parents who are here, I look out over this group and I know that each one of you have touched my life in such a special way. And people like Sandy that we've shared so much pain who couldn't stand up here tonight and say it. But for those that we've shared joys together, how grateful we are for the children who were so ill and we saw them recover and go home, and how happy I am for that. But for those that we have shared so much pain and heartache, those are moments that I will never forget, and how special you are to me. And they go back a long way, Betty, to 24 years almost, 23 years ago, or 20 years ago. To all the people who participate on the program, to my wonderful nurses. But no kidding, I want to say a special thanks to my nurses, both past and present, who are here, and the ones who couldn't be here tonight. I want to thank you for the love and the support that you gave me through the years, for the many extra hours of hard work, truly for all the IVs we've started. And even when I let you carry my cross. And to the hospital, Mr. Bullard, for permitting us to give love and care and to help families and children through the years. For that, I'm so grateful. To be able to work in a place, a caring place like Presbyterian, who not only cared about me, but cared about the children that we cared for and the parents who were there. And it was such a joy. To Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Bryan and Dr. Covey and all the rest of you who've worked so hard to make this night possible and who've established the Pediatric Fund in my name. I'm so grateful. I'm so happy to know that many, many children and parents and nurses will benefit greatly by this through the years. Again, I hope that I can see you afterwards, but I want to thank all of you for coming. It's been a long program. And thank you for your patience and for sitting through this. And I love all of you very much.
There was one special person, and 3 people, I would say, that wanted to be here. These flowers are from them. All our love on this special night. We wish we could be with you, Bill, Tricia, and Katie. Have a seat. 2 minutes and I'll be through. Then we'll let you eat. We've been talking about red so much. There's at least one unsung hero here tonight, because behind any great person, there's got to be someone else that's upholding that person. It's always said that behind a great man is a great woman. Well, the reverse is true here tonight, and that's our friend Bill Gupton. He's always been there to hear about her day, the highs, but especially the lows. You've heard how he polished her shoes every night. The one story that we need to share with you was a morning at 6:15 or 6:30, and she drove into the garage at the hospital and couldn't quite reach the card slot, so she opened the door, got out to put the card in, and the door slammed with it locked. And she frantically said to someone, "Please go call Bill." So the call went out to Bill, and lo and behold, she didn't realize she was standing next to a car. The window was down the whole time. And as usual, Bill made the long trip in from out northwest Charlotte and just shook his head and went back. Bill, we thank you for sharing her with us. And let's not forget Ms. Allen, Kate Allen, for sharing Emma with us, for giving us Emma, and we do thank you for that. There are many credits here tonight, and your program will bear that out. Gail Warren, I'd like to recognize as kind of that co-chairperson who's helped us pull this together. And we thank you, Gail, and all those that have helped her. We thank Henry Bostic, Jane Lesser, Ms. Cooper, Mr. Bullard, and all the administrative people that have given us that necessary backup to get all this together. We also thank Barbara Stutz and for giving us some notoriety and announcement on top of the day today. We especially thank Alan Norwood for that excellent article in the paper today to let many of you know that this was going on. We had hoped that was going to get on Sunday, but it didn't, and so we were happy to have it today. Thank you especially for the Christ Church people who let us use this auditorium tonight. Also, the balloons here were given by Floating Flowers of Kings Drive. They gave it to us at a discount, and we thank them for that. The video by Dan Smith will give Emma a living remembrance of all of this. Members of the program, wives, husbands, and especially for Jackie Mackey, who you're about to latch into that meal we promised you an hour ago. But you will know what she's like when you eat her food. She's great, and she's from Lancaster, and we're happy to have her catering here tonight. Now, just one remark or two. You've heard a few of the many things this great lady has done. One last thing I would like to share is that she's shown me and others how to blend our faith in God and His Son, Jesus Christ, into our practice of medicine. It is in those times of fear, anger, hurt, and sorrow that we need to help our patients, their families, and help them to get in touch with that extra strength that's available. She's shown us how to care, to touch, to hug and cry, to pray with all of our patients and families, thereby stretching us to practice medicine of the whole person in mind and body and spirit. We love you, Emma, and thank you for it. Meeting's adjourned. Some of you go to eat and the others come greet Emma. And please sign the books if you didn't sign them so she'll know you were here.
you.